Welcome to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him at gods5minutes@gmail.com. Now, here's Ed Wilson with God's 5 Minutes.
Hello, friends. John 9 describes how Jesus healed a man who had been born blind. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground, made clay of the spittle, anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay, and said unto him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way therefore, and washed, and came seeing. It is remarkable that out of 8 miracles recorded in this gospel, only one is Jesus' response to a request. In this case, unlike many of the other blind men in the Gospels who cried loudly after Jesus for help, we have no record of this man asking for anything. Indeed, all the conversation John recorded leading up to this event was between Jesus and his disciples. It is as if the compassion in the purest heart that ever beat looked beyond the dead eyes into the needy soul of this fellow Israelite and saw someone there who could be led into saving belief. And so, unasked, he performed a miracle with 2 wet lumps of clay. What a shock it must have been to the sightless one to feel the wet, sticky material as it touched his most needy place. Jesus could have cured with a word, as he did at other times, but he chose instead to prepare a task for the blind man himself to carry out in order that he might be partner, both by faith and actions, in his own healing. In using spittle, Jesus gave something of himself, which is always necessary for our receiving anything from him. The word translated anointed also means daubed. The Lord carefully spread the mud thoroughly over the eyes of the unfortunate sufferer with his own hand. It is significant that Christ did not promise sight to this blind beggar. The miraculous powers of God come alive by faith in the soul. It's estimated that the spot where this took place was up to half a mile from the pool of Siloam. He must have presented a strange picture as he used whatever means he had to get to the pool. Did he feel his way with the tapping of a staff and the shuffle of uncertain feet, searching for the trodden path? Or did he maybe have a friend who would guide him on his route? What we know is that he obeyed the command from this stranger who, instead of dropping a coin or two into his palm, had created for his benefit an entirely new way of receiving sight, such as had never before been known in the history of the world, and followed it with an instruction of moderate difficulty, but calling for an action that had in itself no curative power whatever. Yes, Christ had made no promise, but already the man's heart was expectant. When he reached the famous pool, maybe he counted the steps as he descended, then scooped up the water and washed away the clay and the darkness. Such faith could not go unrewarded. This set the pattern for New Testament evangelism. First, people must hear the word of Jesus. Second, they must believe and obey it. Third, they must wash. And finally, the light will come. And this example of cooperative miracles between Jesus and those who loved and blessed was repeated over and over in his work. Water was provided in the vessels, Jesus turned it to wine. Disciples let down the nets, Jesus provided the fish. Others rolled the stone, Jesus called Lazarus forth. A lad provided loaves and fishes, Jesus blessed and brake. At the very same time the process of healing the blind eyes was taking place, so was the far more important one of the salvation of this man's never-dying soul. He heard the voice which said to him no more of salvation than it had of sight. But the upheaval among the scribes and Pharisees caused by this Sabbath healing resulted in his being expelled from the temple, which was equivalent to excommunication. What a strange penalty for a man washing his face and getting his sight. Then came the greatest blessing of all. Jesus found him. Jesus always finds his children. And Jesus gave the man spiritual eyes more vision than all the presumed devout leaders about him. He healed his body and he's healed his soul. Have you talked to him today?
You have been listening to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him by email at godsfive-minutes@gmail.com. Tune in next time to hear more encouraging thoughts from God's Word on God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson.
If you live within the broadcast area of KNEO Radio, we have a podcast just for you. The KNEO Community Connection keeps your finger on the pulse of what's coming up in the four-state area, telling you about upcoming events you don't want to miss, organizations in our communities doing great work, and conversations with the dynamic citizens who are behind it all. There's a lot going on around you that you don't want to miss. This is Luke Taylor. Join me each week as we talk about what's happening with the people who are making it happen. Brought to you by KNEO Radio 91.7 FM and the Sky High Podcast Network. Subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts.